Hi there. Thanks for tuning in. You know, it's hard not to notice what's going on out there. I mean, it's a freaking circus, honestly. And be careful because it can be addicting. You know, what we saw the other day was a huge display of power dynamics on the world stage. And, you know, wherever you are on the spectrum, this isn't a left or right thing. This is about energy imbalance. This is about character. This is about how we present ourselves to the world and how the world either cooperates together or falls apart. This week, we are diving deep into sex, politics, and power dynamics. But of course, we're going to do it the Tantric Awakening way. Stay tuned.
Welcome to a new paradigm, a new way of being, free from shame, self-limitation, or cultural programming. Welcome to a new you, a new world, full of endless possibilities. Welcome to your Tantric Awakening. Hey everyone, this is Kendall.
I'm Andre Knight.
And we're so excited to be with you here today. And as you were saying earlier, we're going to be diving deep into the intersection between sexuality, politics, power dynamics, and how this relates to intimacy skills and being able to really connect to the heart, because right now we are in a juncture moment, a pivotal turning point where we're being invited into the heart, because Venus also just went retrograde. Venus, the planet of love, the planet of, reflecting on how you express love to not only yourself but others. The planet that's all about self-worth is inviting us to slow down. And I don't know about you, beloved, but I feel like right now there is this reflection period already in motion. And even for me today, we're recording this during that retrograde, and I'm like, wow, it's so sensitive. It's emotional. And I feel it. I feel it in my bones. And what I would love to reflect on with you is the hope that is available for all of us in this time, and to really reflect on all these parts and how they interweave, because Tantra truly is the weaving of energy. And I was so excited. I'm still so excited to dive deep into this topic, because wouldn't you say they intersect each other in this divine dance?
Well, yeah. I mean, I bet you wouldn't think that what's going on out there in the news and on the global stage is a tantric issue at heart. But it really is when you look at the bigger picture, when you take a step back, look at it energetically. And then therein lies the medicine, therein lies the cure too, because Tantra is exactly the medicine that the world needs right now.
So for someone who is new to Tantra, because I know it's a very, broad term, can you define Tantra and what that actually means for you? Because, I'm curious to hear a little bit more. Yeah, it's a good
place to start. Well, Tantra is the study of energy. In the West, a lot of people assume Tantra is all sex. Tantra doesn't shy away from sex. It includes sex, but it's not all about sexuality. It's about sensuality. In other words, the study of the senses, which if fine-tuned enough, can feel energy. You see, my journey was I started studying meditation. Meditation eventually, once I cleared my head of all the stuff, led me to energy awareness. Once you're aware of energy, Tantra is then all the things you can do with it, which you can probably put A and B together and figure out where that could have benefits in the bedroom. But the thing is, it can impact so many other areas of your life, your health, your wealth, your career, how you grow, how you prosper as a human, and yes, how the world itself thrives, because what each of us is experiencing internally is reflected in the outside world, and especially when that energy is collective.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me, I love even the conversation, or the picture I'm having is the innocence around Tantra and just how this relates to the nervous system. Because if we are bodies with energy moving through it, and at times energy is getting stuck, it's like Tantra is essentially, I would say, wouldn't you agree that it's connected to the nervous system and one's ability to be attuned to that?
It's part of the nervous system on the 3D layer, on the physical layer of density. Yeah, it's tied to the nervous system. It is electrical in nature. Energy follows a lot of the same principles as electricity. Like, this isn't supernatural stuff. Physics already has, definitions and laws for some of this stuff. That's on one layer. Then there's a system of chakras and nadis, going by the Sanskrit terms, which are energy centers and energy pathways within the body. Chinese acupuncture makes use of these same pathways. They call them meridians. It's superimposed over the nervous system, but it's of a different density. So you wouldn't see it with a microscope, for example, because light would go right through it. It's a different density of reality. What some people say is a different dimension, different frequency.
Yeah.
And energy flows through us. It's like light. Light can be an X-ray. Light can be television. Light can be even a radio signal. So same thing. There's like a spectrum of frequencies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's multidimensional, and I'm really curious to go deeper into this because, merging the themes of Venusian energy, merging the themes of intimacy, I truly believe, in politics. And honestly, the political space, I know some people are like, oh, when it comes to politics, because it brings up so much energy in the body. And some people go into disassociation, don't want to talk about it. And yet, I truly believe there is an intersection between like what you're talking about of the nervous system and just like the density of energy and where we are as a society, which is we're in the denser places, I feel, collectively. Like, unless you've like done the inner healing work and really gone within yourself, there's going to be like this stark contrast. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is the work of Tantra. Once you become aware of the energy, it's realizing where you are and where you want to be and raising it. If you're skeptical, if you're like, I don't know if energy exists or not, well, have you ever been sexually aroused? That's energy. That's what it feels like when energy is coursing through your body. So in many ways, some of these tantric, well, all of these tantric exercises, but the ones that specifically deal with sexuality, as you raise your arousal, you raise your energy level. You see, and if I think back to what's been in the news, what I saw taking place in the Oval Office, I saw 3 men that like really, really needed to have some kind of cathartic release so their energy could go somewhere, in the old days when men would go to war or come back from war, they would go to the ancient temples and they would seek out healing feminine energy because the feminine power is the power that ends wars.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a deep need for people to learn the art of receiving. And the art of receiving is very much tied to softening. And we are in a turning point where either we can harden or we can soften through like a resilient strength where it's, we are like, our mission is to advocate for human rights, to advocate for the person within ourselves. Like for me, I'm advocating for my inner child every day. I'm advocating for these internal family systems, right? I'm advocating for myself and for the other. And I think this is essentially, we're being invited to soften and really sit with. And I that's what I love about you and I, and this space for the collective is like, even when all of this stuff is going on outside of you, like we've mentioned in prior podcasts, it's like, remember, we have access to the eye of the storm, and the eye of the storm allows you to soften. And I even think the practice of like meditation, it's like really coming into that awareness of breath and like really taking a moment to be with yourself, because we do have the power to regulate our bodies, calm our minds, really be that softened place within what often can feel like the world's hardening. But in a other light, I also feel like there's this quiet, gentle strength that's rumbling through the voices of people right now.
Yeah. If you look at everything in the media, they want you to think that we're divided, more divided than ever. No. But everywhere I look, there are signs of solidarity. There's the 50-51 movement, right? 50 protests in 50 states at the same time. So there's a coming together as well. There's I see the world coming together. There were world leaders from all over the world coming together with a single statement. So as much as there is division being presented in the media, I also see signs of unity coming together. Like deep down beneath all the labels, we know that we're all human.
The picture that I keep getting is truly that of a playground. And I invite you to consider when you were a kid and you were on a playground, maybe at your school, maybe with your family, with other kids around. As a priestess, as a high priestess of Tantric awakening, as a woman that has gone through so many initiations into the underworld, dying and being reborn again, empowering our clients to go through these really deep initiations, what I'm seeing right now is what happens when we don't go into our initiations. And honestly, it's a product of our society. We have lost sight of the stories, the storytelling, the initiations, men being initiated, women being initiated. And that's why I'm so passionate as the high priestess of Tantric awakening and really stepping into this so much deeper, is because I see the value of being held in those moments. And I see the ramifications even more so right now. And it's why so many people on, the international stage are looking and witnessing bullying from the President of the United States alongside the Vice President, and people that are bullying another president about what he's wearing, when he's truly just trying to represent and support his own people. And why I'm saying this is because, and bringing this to light, is when we look at a playground, and I have had the honor of being a dance teacher on these playgrounds. I have literally worked alongside kids. Okay. And here's the thing I have learned is that when it comes to innocence, which is very much connected with eroticism, right? Innocence is, for me, acknowledging that the inner child within myself has taught me so much about my adult self. And when I have been around these kids, for example, as their dance teacher, what I've noticed is when they feel emotions, it goes right through them. They're very good at regulating their emotions, right? And usually as our teacher, when I've had, kids come up to me and they're like, Billy said this about me, Miss Kendall, I'm so upset. Billy said this to me. Billy did that. Ugh, it's like these kids trying to figure out their life and their emotions. The best thing I could give to them is holding space for their emotions, but really just guiding them through that, holding space, and also recognizing, when Billy was hurt by another person, it's like, okay, how does that make you feel? How did it make you feel? And then I would, really show healthy communication between two people, these two kids. And then I would like, can you guys be, you don't have to be best friends, but can you be respectful? And they're like, yeah, Miss Kendall. And then they would go run off together and play. So bringing this to like the initiations, bringing this to this intersection, the tantric weaving of sexuality, of power dynamics, of politics, is what happens externally is always here to reveal, I truly believe, what's going on unconsciously for the collective. So Carl Jung has that quote of, until you make the unconscious conscious, you'll call it fate. And what we're seeing right now is the unconscious becoming conscious. And there is a lot of people speaking up. And it's no coincidence that like I pulled the Sekhmet card, the red lady. She's all about like rising up. She's about honoring her anger, honoring these primal emotions. I think people right now, beloved, are seeing the bullying energy. They're seeing it for what it is.
I mean, yeah, you nailed it. It's one big playground. Now imagine you could walk into that Oval Office and tell these grown men, these little boys in grown men bodies, exactly the same thing. What emotions are you feeling right now? Words aside, what emotion, what frequency of energy is coursing through your body right now? And you see, the thing is, behind every bully, behind every thorny, mean bully trying to dominate others, and we're going to get into power dynamics, right? Behind every bully is a little boy, sometimes a little girl, who needs soothing acceptance and love. That's what it really comes down to. Soothing acceptance and love. When a man goes to a brothel, he thinks he's seeking sex. He's not seeking sex. He's seeking soothing acceptance and love, just to surrender. The louder, the meaner the bully, the more they're craving surrender, is what it comes down to.
We're getting to a sweet spot. Yeah. This is why on our tantric retreats, this is why I really want to focus on this, like even on one day of our retreats. And we've been really, really honored to hold space for people in this. And yeah, like just surrendering. And the whole power dynamic that was displayed, it was like a BDSM humiliation scene. It was impeccable.
I know. And I don't know if people caught like the, the sexual nuances and energy play that was going on there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was very much like, I felt like, I think it was JD Vance or one of them said, they kept saying like, say thank you, or like invoking, like, say thank you.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah.
Who's your daddy?
It's just like, woo. And it's wild because these are two of the leaders of the country. And
yet they still don't feel they have enough power. They have to still pound their chest and kind of prove it.
Yeah. And see, what I want to even acknowledge here as well is that the louder the, pounding of the chest, the more I see into that person's soul that they're really just, their heart's broken.
Vulnerability.
If you're trying to put another down in the first place, we're breaking that down. If you're trying to put someone else down, pointing the fingers, interrupting them, not giving them a chance to speak, which happened, that really reveals insecurity. And it reveals the unhealed masculine. It's really related to that patriarchal systemic problem that's not only impacted men, but it impacted so many women, where women have gone into that hyper masculinity to compensate for the patriarchal kind of focus in society. And yet, I truly believe that we're in the 9th year. I mean, this is fact. We're in numerology terms. We've mentioned this before on the show, but we're in the 9th year. The 9th year of numerology is the snake. The snake represents the divine feminine. And when a snake sheds, the snake grows. So to me, this is just, as a priestesses, and you taught me this, and I remember the conversations where I had like light bulb moments, but the path of the erotically expressed woman, which includes the priestess, the temple priestess, it's acknowledging that you, as the priestess, as a woman, because all women have the ability to tap into this because we are all healers, if we tap into that power, are portals between worlds. We help people transition between worlds. We help people, that's why they're death doulas. That's why they're midwives, right? So to me, what this moment is presenting itself as is, this is like, we're in that death rebirth portal. It's like that woman who's about to give birth and she's about to leave behind the life of not having to raise a child, really.
Well, you're speaking into the energy imbalance that I brought up earlier. That's just it. The midwives, the doulas, the priestesses are missing from this process. We're in a very patriarchal, male-dominated world still, from an energy perspective. There's some equalities here and there. I also see rights rapidly being taken away, which is kind of scary, but energetically, it's a very masculine world. And because the feminine is missing, it's an off-balance masculine. It's not the protector energy. It's not the stability in the middle of the storm. It's not the calm. It's the opposite. It's chaos. It's war. It's the more aggressive the unhealed masculine is, the more it's trying to mask a wound or vulnerability. And this, this comes into the father wound. A lot of bullies come from environments where the dad was either abusive or strict, or sometimes absent, or some combination of the above.
Yeah. I mean, you've been bullied. I've been in ways bullied. I think the thing is, I think everyone's been bullied in some way.
But some integrate it.
That's the difference.
When they have a healthy feminine reflected in their mother and a healthy masculine reflected in their father, they have models to integrate with. Okay? And I'm not saying it has to be like a traditional nuclear hetero couple by any stretch of the imagination. In same-sex couplings, there can still be a feminine and a masculine energy. I'm referring to energy, not gender here. When one or the other is off balance, this is where you develop a father wound, mother wound, sometimes a little bit of both. You don't have healthy modeling, therefore you don't integrate. We all have things happen to us. What forms a trauma that's not healed, that shows up later in life, is, did you integrate?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've definitely had to personally face my mother and father wound. I've integrated, and it's definitely been a journey. And one of the things I've learned is that it's the journey of self-agency and reparenting, and taking personal responsibility for your own well-being. And I say that a lot because I do EFT tapping all the time. It's like always about, I'm taking responsibility for my own well-being. And it's acknowledging that the thoughts create the emotions, and the emotions, the beliefs, they're all connected. And yeah, I truly believe if we faced all of us, our inner father, our inner mother, and we came into what is tantric union, this world would be different. And that's what I feel the call right now is truly, I don't believe the feminine is gone. I truly believe the feminine is alive, but afraid to be seen. It's the visibility wound. And this is something I've been personally facing myself because, well, life's a constant growing, learning journey, right? And I've learned that the feminine really yearns for healthy masculinity. And what the feminine will do when the masculine energy doesn't feel safe is she might retreat, go into herself. And so what we're needing more than ever, I truly believe, is as women to acknowledge, like you were mentioning, like the father wound, but like developing that inner man, that creating those structures, creating that like inner daddy energy. I know for me, when I've done erotic writing, I've even like spoken to myself as like this inner man that's like seducing me into myself and like, talking to me in a way that's like firm, but also like empowering. And that's what I think we really need right now in this time is like really evaluating how are you talking to yourself? Because when I think about power play dynamics and the negative side of like imbalance, it's coming from I am speaking at you. I'm not actually connecting to you. It's easy to talk at someone. I can think of like unhealthy parenting, which is like, do this, do that. And then there's like, as children, we kind of rebel if it's just commands. But healthy communication is, hey, Billy, how would it feel if we connected later tonight, we went to the movies, and how would it feel if mom helped you cook dinner? You choose what we make for dinner. It's nonviolent communication. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what's really needed right now is, really framing our words and our self-talk first and foremost, how we evaluating, which is so important right now, evaluating how you're talking to yourself, and then really allowing yourself to transform in that so that you can be a better person, right? You can be nicer to people outside yourself.
You're touching a little bit on what we covered in our episode about the power of love, which is the difference between power versus force. Mm-hmm. We're seeing a lot of force out there on the world stage. Mm-hmm. People who use force generally feel they lack in power. I'll say that again. People who rely on force generally do so because they perceive they lack power. Somebody who's standing in their power has nothing to prove. Mm-hmm. They already know. See the difference? So,
yeah. Reclaiming your power is key. Reclaiming your agency, reclaiming, like working with the goddess Vesta. That's something I love to look at in people's charts, because when Vesta is all about the priestess path, Vesta is the self-agency. It's the opposite of Juno energy, which is commitment, right? And when you reclaim that, your inner power, oh my gosh, you become unstoppable. You realize like, I don't have to prove myself. And I've personally gone on that journey because I used to chronically people please and betray myself, abandon myself in order to belong. And the biggest lessons I've learned over my journey is no, authenticity and self-respect are more important to me, right? Where I'm true to myself. I'm true to honoring my boundaries and my needs, because until we're honoring our own needs and our own boundaries, right? Until we're actually intimate with ourselves, into me, I see, and we know our limits, until we have that revelation and learned how to communicate it, of course, what we're seeing is outside of ourselves. Of course, we're going to, try to have a power play where you're trying to overthrow somebody and that whole energy, which is what we saw. It's kind of like whose chest is bigger than mine.
Well, yeah. And you know what I see out there? This kind of goes back to where we were talking about density, right? You can be physical, solid matter density, or you can be energetic, etheric level density. Everything I see out there is ego driven. If I cut my finger and now it has a wound, all my attention's going to be on my finger. I might walk into a wall because so much of my attention is on my finger. Right? We've become ego focused because our ego is wounded. Our ego is not whole. Wholeness. It's not integrated. So all our attention is on the ego. It's hard to be spirit driven when you're so ego focused. And the reason we're ego focused is because there's wounds drawing our attention there. So if we heal, if we integrate, if we become whole, that's where we can start to look beyond ourselves and be more spirit driven than ego driven. And when you're operating from that place, it's a lot harder to do harm to each other.
I would love just raw and vulnerable, because here's the thing about partnership that I've learned. It's the most intimate experience. And you've been on this journey with me for years now, and you've seen my ego dissolve many times. And so I'm just curious, like, if you could describe how that has felt for you, and given my background, because I come from my ego dissolved around my identity, solar plexus, just like after leaving Christianity. And I just want to, hear your thoughts, because we do currently work with couples. We work with people around transitions and like shedding things and really facing their inner wounds. So I'm just curious because,
Well, it's something I have some experience in too. I mean,
speak on
your identity, as you mentioned, like you got thrust into a whole new identity. But even since then, I've seen you, transition, morph, evolve, and seen a few other identities. I've learned to let go of identity, I grew up in Russia. All my life, I thought I was Russian. My parents are Russian for generations back, right? And then one day for my birthday, I do a DNA test and it comes back 0% Russian, like not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. And my parents swear that I'm not adopted, and I believe them, but just, we came to Russia from somewhere else, obviously, 3/4 of my DNA is Italian, specifically Roman, and then 1/4 of it is Egyptian. So I had to let go of that identity, having all my life been Russian. Kids in school used to ask me if I'm Italian, and I'd correct them. I'm like, no, I'm Russian. I owe a lot of apologies. And then I grow to find out that we don't have AM and PM in Russia. We have a 24-hour clock.
Right,
So when the documents got translated, AM and PM was wrong. And as an astrologer, like your ascending sign changes every 10 minutes. So I had to let go of my zodiac, so that identity got shifted. So having gone through this process a few times, I just don't get attached to identity. Speaking engagements, they ask you to submit a bio. It's like, well, what do you want? It's a snapshot of what I am in this moment, but I'm always fluid, and it's just, I've learned the less you attach these things, the better, because the moment you get stuck in labels, that's where politics emerges, right? Mountains don't have lines drawn on them. Oceans don't have lines drawn on them. People do all that because they start to cling to their definitions, cling to their rigidity, right?
This as you talk about it, I'm like,
everybody, we pointed out what Vance did wrong, what Trump did wrong. Zelensky also kind of walked in with that identity. I'm going to say it. I'm the Ukrainian, I'm the freedom fighter. And with all due respect, but like, what about I'm a man here to solve a problem? Here's what I need. Here's what I can bring to the table. What do you need? What do you bring to the table? Hey, can we put our heads together and try to solve a problem? As separate from our identity that we've hung on ourselves.
I would love to ask you about this because you've been to Burning Man. Okay. And I have not, but I've heard a lot of things. And I've heard that a big part of the culture is really shedding your identity and making it about like solving problems, because we've talked about this of being in positions where you've had to think quickly and like solve problems, and like it wasn't necessarily about so what's your career, because like here in America it's very like that, like what do you do? But when you're in, as
if that's the first thing to define yourself,
which is very different, like in like European countries where it's like they have like month-long vacations. Like no, it's work is not like the first thing. But
one of the first things my European friends told me, because I spent a few years living over there, they're like, "You Americans, you live to work. Here in Europe, we just work to live." Yeah, here and there occasionally. I'm. They show up in the office at 9-10 in the afternoon. They take an extended lunch. They're usually leaving by 3 or 4. Some companies there are experimenting with a 4-day work week, and yet they're just as productive, if not more. Stuff still gets done. You don't have to grind yourself, to the breaking point, the bare minimum you need to keep from falling apart.
It's really interesting because even as you're mentioning this, what's coming to mind is the energy of delusions falling apart right now. And I think about like the ending of patriarchy, like it's fizzling out right now. But I'm thinking about like in light of time, if we're talking about that, is the whole 9-to-5 grind and how that all comes into play too, because right now I do really feel there is such a challenge. Like people are challenging what they've known. And I think about the examples you gave around your ego dissolving. I'm like, yeah, perhaps it's more about acceptance and non-attachment, right? Like, what if it's really our attachment to our identities that is causing the suffering?
Well, that's exactly what's causing the suffering. That's my point.
Yeah. I'm just like reflecting it as you were mentioning it. I was like, oh, like, of course. And it reminds me of personally, because in astrology, my ascendant's Aquarius, and like Aquarius is a revolutionary, but also like practicing non-attachment. It's like detaching. It's just interesting because it's that conversation too of this whole concept of a box and how people put themselves in boxes, but then that box can like rebel against them.
If you're too attached to the box, you're again ego driven.
Right.
Not spirit driven. If you're spirit driven, you can see the box from outside the box and recognize that it's a box.
Right. You become the observer.
If you're ego driven, you're confined to whatever you can see within the confines of the box.
I mean, that's the path of awakening. I mean, when I realized how attached, you saw it. How attached. I was so attached, guys, to my Christian, this is who I am. And everything that I'm about is under this label. Like when that dissolved years ago, and looking back, I can be like, wow, like that was an intense ego death, dark night of the soul. Yet
Saturn return,
which if you don't know what Saturn return is, it's like when Saturn's guy daddy, it's like all about discipline and like Saturn will come into our lives to really propel us forward in our mission. And that's what I wanted, to speak into the soul. Because if we're talking about the stance of like ego and soul and all these like duality, all these things, I truly believe more than ever, it's important to make a decision for yourself of like, do you want to be connected to your soul's journey, soul's path, your soul voice? And here's the thing about ego I've learned with astrology is like the ego's not necessarily bad. Like the sun reflects the ego, right? But it's important to understand like you are a complex being and there's so much to you. Like when I do readings for people, it's like I'm showing you the bigger picture of who you are so that you realize, and this is the wonderful thing about reading someone's, like, for example, their progress charts, or looking at which a progress chart will look at your soul's evolutionary journey. For example, the inner world, the moon, for example, shifts every 2.5 years. So you're, as a human being, you have a soul. Your soul chose this human bodysuit in order for you to go through these initiations into soul growth. So absolutely, like, I think what's happening is when the ego gets so inflamed and so the priority that people are abandoning their souls, and they're not even attuned to their soul's blueprint, like that's when issues really start to happen. And astrology has really changed my life because it gave me understanding the cosmos has really given me peace that has just really helped me walk this journey with more like confidence that I'm on this planet Earth at this time for a reason, like divine timing.
Mm-hmm. We absolutely are, and you are absolutely right. The ego is not bad, okay, guys? The ego is there to serve a purpose.
Right.
Or it wouldn't be there. That purpose is protection. Sometimes it's protection from non-existence, which is why the ego likes to define itself and things, right? Because that's the opposite of not existing, is defining. But it's protection. That's what it boils down to. You don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Because what is lacking, what our ancestors had, is like the welcoming into the tribe.
So true.
We've limited ourselves now to a nuclear family, so there's 2 parents. And usually both of them are working a full-time job, and you're stuck with a babysitter or something. In the old days, the entire village, they say it takes a village. It really does. The entire village raised all the children together collectively. So kids had other kids to play with. So there was a group of adults you could come to, there was a tribe that welcomed you, that held you, celebrated the positive things, held you through the difficult things, rites of passage as you develop as a human, and all of that feels like it's missing from our society today. When I was growing up, it was plop the kid in front of the TV. That was the replacement babysitter. Nowadays, it's like hand them an iPad, hand them a phone, let them entertain themselves.
Well,
we've seen what happens to adults, right? When you give them phones on a date. Like I've literally passed a couple sitting on a park bench together, and they're both in their phones, and like you just wonder, like, are they texting each other or other people?
Yeah.
But imagine you start giving that to a child instead of like a chest hug where they can feel your heartbeat beating.
Ooh, you're going to get me emotional.
Now they've got this screen flashing 120 hertz into their eyes 120 times a second.
Yeah. Well, this is why...
Now you start to understand, like...
No, it just like, guys, I've been just so emotional today. It's just like the stream of like, just emotions have been so raw today. But yeah, like exactly what you're talking about. Like
you said it at the start of the show, the external world is a reflection of the internal world. And now we're starting to understand why the internal world is the way it is.
Yeah, I truly believe there must be a lot of water in my shirt right now. With astrology, elemental magic is understanding that certain parts of your chart have certain elements highlighted anytime. So the water element is pretty intense for me today. But as you were mentioning that, like, yeah, attunement, you know, as you even mentioned that, like, that's one of the gifts that you've given me. I'll be completely honest, like, because of you, beloved, you have helped me understand the masculine. You've helped me understand and heal my even father wound. You've really helped me understand emotional intelligence and attunement. And it's helped me a lot. And I personally didn't have that necessarily in my prior, like, relationships with just men in my family. It was very kind of like there's a disconnect there. And yeah, I just wanted to, like, acknowledge that, like, perhaps the disconnect and why even it's so, like, seeing men bullying each other breaks my heart. You know, seeing men who are here to protect the divine feminine. We'll set that contrast, right? It's like seeing men that are trying to, you know, one up each other, and they're going through that. And then there's men like you that are just so integrated with the feminine, and it's just like my emotions are not too much for you. Like, that's what this world needs right now, truly. And I also even want to say it's too, because, like, power dynamics, I just want to say this, like, everything we're seeing right now on the political stage, which is a circus, is because it's an issue in the nuclear family. This is happening at a microcosm level. Everything we're seeing on the grand stage is because it's happening in a smaller stage. Behind closed doors. Behind closed doors. And this is a very personal topic for me. This is very personal, sexuality, politics, and power dynamics, because this is what led me into me expressing my voice in this time. This is what led me to where I'm at. This led me to you, led me into your arms. Because as a woman, I was claiming my voice around sex education, sexuality, speaking up, because I was so sick of seeing and hearing male pastors tell me what I should do with my body.
Power dynamics.
I had male pastors claim they could heal women's hymens. And
that's ridiculous, because it's a medical fact that you can't even really tell if a woman is a virgin or not by looking at her hymen.
But here's the thing about the feminine. The feminine is here to ask questions. The thing about patriarchy is it doesn't want you to speak up. It doesn't want you to speak out about how things have impacted you. It really hurt me. It really hurt me deeply to have a male pastor at Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry to claim to heal women's hymens because their virginity was taken from a man. They had sex before marriage.
And whose business is that anyway, other than hers? Who cares? A woman's allowed to express and enjoy her body. It's men. It's like always, Roe versus Wade, same thing. Men seeking to have control over women's bodies.
And why this is something I'm willing to just like share, because speaking up about what is right, in the sense of speaking up for human rights, is something that should be cherished, I truly believe, celebrated. And as someone that has understands sexual abuse and understands where these power dynamics go out of hand in that space, I'm so grateful. I'm so proud of myself that intuition, my higher self, was like, no, we're not doing this anymore. That same man that leads the school of BSSM is the same man who was teaching us during Sex Week about how to hug men. He was the same man that was trying to tell me,
lest you cause them to stumble, right?
And manipulating the entire crowd, making it a laughing stock. Why am I bringing
disempowering women, because an empowered woman scares the shit out of them.
Well, here's the thing. I don't give a royal shit anymore. I don't. His name's Chris fucking Ballatin. And that really fucking hurt, because I know a lot of people that day were probably like confused. And this is why I started speaking up around these kind of things online. I used my voice to educate and be like, I'm so sick of this abuse in the church. I'm so sick of this purity culture doctrine bullshit that saying women should not be connected to their yonis, their bodies, should not masturbate. That's bullshit. Babies in the womb touch themselves. So anyone telling you what to do with your body, like, royally fuck off.
Woo!
I'm so sick of this bullshit. And I'm saying this because also too, the goddess asteroid Eris, like, which is all about, let me pull it up. Like, it's all good. It's just like all about speaking up. I've been literally, my biggest wound, my Chiron's about being seen in Leo, and I'm so fucking sick. I'm so fucking sick of unhealed toxic masculinity. And I'm feeling emotional about it because it's time for us to rise as women. This is why I'm a high priestess. I take this very fucking seriously, because before the fucking Christianity bullshit came in to like control people and do fear mongering in the name of Jesus, because the goddess religions, the goddess was celebrated. Women were celebrated before Christianity came in and was like, don't do this, don't do that.
Well, they were religions based on love instead of fear.
And I'm so sick. Here's the thing. It's like, this is why I'm here, because holy rage is just as fucking holy as joy. It's just as valuable.
Well, speaking into power dynamics.
Yeah, let's talk about it, because it's really fucking important.
And speaking into how religion can, for example, tear families apart.
Yeah.
What happened when you started speaking up about the things that you saw that were out of alignment? What happened when you started speaking up?
I was challenged. I was challenged by people close to me, because it brought up stuff in them and I triggered them, and I know that. And triggering their emotional I triggered their beliefs. I triggered their fears. I brought up stuff to this from the surface, from the unconscious, the suppressed. And I was identified as essentially like questioned of like, am I a devil worshiper? Like XYZ. And politics was integrated into this because at the time I was around that political energy, like constantly hearing about Fox News at the time where I was living at home with my parents. And yeah, it was just like politics was brainwashing. It felt very disempowering. Yeah. Felt very disempowering.
Politics influenced the people who were in a power dynamic with you. So they acted out what they saw their role models acting out, just like we as children learn from our parents who are our first role models.
Yeah.
If the news is your go-to and you see dictators all over the world acting out the way they do, how are you going to govern your own family? You're going to repeat the behaviors you see modeled.
You know, one of the things I want to bring to the table in this conversation, I mean it when I say it's personal because it was personal. And that Trump and his narcissistic tendency or narcissism and his easily being manipulated by Putin. Trump has really impacted people, for example, like in my personal family. And it was just really interesting. And I want to mention this, like he was like, I think mentioning in the conversation on the international TV of like playing the cards. We have the stronger cards, or like, remember that phrase? And it reminds me of like unhealthy power dynamics, where unhealthy power dynamics are, is when you're trying to exert yourself over somebody else, make someone submit, make someone's needs not important. It's a problem. And this is like so throughout, like I was saying, like this is everything we're seeing on the public, like on the national stage, it's happening in homes. It's happening on the little moments of like communication. It's a communication, a heart issue. Like if we don't learn how to communicate with people, if we don't actually feel like our hearts, we go into what the side of Venus that is, because Venus is connected to Mars and Taurus energy. Like she's connected to both, and what we're seeing right now in society is a very focus on that Mars, which is like can be about war. We're missing that like soft sensuality, but that is rising. We're at the end of an era, about to be rebirthed into a new era, and we got to feel to heal. Like even now, like being raw and real, because this is real life. This is a transit we're all going through, Venus in retrograde. Like reflecting on what do you, like even with everything going on around you, like what are your values? Are you going to treat yourself? Like, and this is what I want to present to everyone as well. Like everyone's birth chart is being highlighted in certain aspects of your life depending on where Venus is transiting, moving in the sky in your birth chart. So I want to preface as well, if that's something of interest for you that you would like to like learn more about, I definitely offer readings. We also offer readings and very much coaching alongside that together. So you just need to go to our Instagram, and yeah, really excited to connect with you. But nonetheless, beyond that plugin, go ahead.
Well, as long as you brought up Instagram, yeah. The Tantric Mystic _ to get in touch with Kendall, and at Andre Night Awakening to get in touch with me and to follow all things Tantric Awakening at tantric.awakening. Instagram's probably the best way to reach out. But yeah, we do couples coaching, individual coaching. We are really good at integrating, what's happening above the stars, what's happening below, the underlying energetic magical currents, as well as practical real world stuff, kind of the Tantra, the weaving, the intersection of all three. That's what we do. We help people navigate change, transformation, whether it's you that's transforming or the world or a little bit of both, really.
Yeah, it's important. It's important right now. And we pulled up some other cards as well, pulled in Kali, the mother of the universe, and her mantra is, I release all that doesn't serve me. It's time to be the truth of who I am. When I was thinking about Kali and pulling this card, like it's usually seen, she has like skulls all around her neck and she has a sword and she's a dark goddess, but she holds the heads of people. And it reminds me of what happens when we disconnect from our hearts. And
well, this is just it. How can you expect to connect to somebody else's heart if you're disconnected from your own? Like, that's the connection that has to happen first.
How can people practically do that? What would you say?
Well, that for many people, that's one of the scariest things. You got to shut out the outside noise. We are so afraid of being with ourselves and by ourselves that we fill our day and every moment with as much distraction as we possibly can. Seriously, like, put the phone down and go sit under a tree. Until it feels uncomfortable for you. Then do it a little bit longer. And then you might finally start hearing your own voice. Instead of all the external voices vying for your attention. Like, reconnect with your own voice. It's never left. It's never gone away. It's always been with you. It's just, but there's been so much other external noise that you've stopped hearing it.
Absolutely. I would continue with that of, it's so pivotal to know your voice in this time. The reason why we're in this position where so many people have been easily manipulated, seduced, the seductress in the shadow realm, been seduced by the Trump, the MAGA. It's because people have not tuned in to this. Slowing down, being still.
Well,
really reflecting, and really, there's a book that has changed my life, and it's something that supports me now, even as a writer, is Wild Women, Wild Voices. And this is why, like, for me, I've joined women's writing groups. And let me know, feel free to reach out to me if that's of interest, because I think it would be fun to launch one. But the power of just, reflecting, getting your thoughts onto paper is such a spiritual practice.
Oh, that's a very powerful practice too. And you might be thinking, well, I don't know what to write about. I don't know if it's important enough. You don't have to know. A lot of people think journaling is a recording process of things you're already aware of. For many, journaling can be a discovery process. You don't know what you're going to write about when you sit down to write. You just make a regular writing practice, and it's okay to start by saying, I don't know what to write about. If you have nothing else, write down that sentence. And then see what comes to you by the end of that sentence, because each one will lead to the next. It can be a process of discovery. You don't have to know where it's going, just like life sometimes. And that's just it. You start hearing that voice. MAGA and Christianity have a lot in common, and no wonder there's so much crossover in the dynamics. Osho referred to it as the cytophobia. Okay. It's the fear of making decisions. So you hand your power, your authority, your autonomy over to someone else because making decisions is scary. Decision, the Latin for decision, if you break the word down, it means to cut away. When you make a decision, you cut away other options. That's scary. It's like the opposite of incision, right? This is decision. You're cutting away other options, and that's scary. So we hand that deciding power over to somebody else. Again, power dynamics, because that feels safer. Jesus will show me the way. Sky Daddy will show me the way. Trump knows better than everyone. He's the faultless leader. Whatever. And it's not even about Trump. Any idol you put on a pedestal, every time has had theirs. You know, it's handing your power away because it feels safe to do so. That's 𝗧𝘗𝗍𝗫. If you want to talk about it in religious terms, like, for example, Jesus had his 12 disciples, right? Which is actually, by the way, a model for the zodiac, but that's a conversation maybe for another episode. But yogis in India have their disciples, right? The gurus. Disciple is almost the opposite of 𝗧𝘗𝗍𝗫. You think disciple is handing your power away, but you see a disciple is making a conscious choice to go on a spiritual pursuit, actually. It's almost the opposite of 𝗧𝘗𝗍𝗫. They're going on a spiritual quest. They're making a conscious choice too. Whereas 𝗧𝘗𝗍𝗫 is just tell me what to do. You know, everybody thinks they're thinking critically, but really they're just sending memes and sound bites and links back and forth of their favorite hero or influencer saying their favorite things. That's not the same as critical thinking.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I've learned, especially since leaving Christianity, because I challenged my mind, I challenged my whole entire ecosystem, is that I've become comfortable with my own presence more than ever. Like, I really value alone time. I really am fascinated with learning and growing and expanding my experience of my own, just my own view of the world, because Christianity was just it's just one part of the journey. For me, I look back, I'm like, okay, thank you.
Well, you see, that's a sign of a healed and integrated ego, because you are not lacking, so you're not constantly looking to fill and fulfill.
I've become very comfortable. I mean, it's been a dance, and you've witnessed this within our connecting and community circles, and you know, that journey that we've been on. I've really learned at the end of the day, you know, because I've been part of groups my whole life, dance studios, competitions, like the church, small groups, like college classes, like I've been always surrounded by people. And then when I went through my Saturn return, it's like the universe was like, just like brought me into myself. And I started to look within, and I started to listen. And I was doing this before I even left to Christianity officially, but that draw, that pull was strong. And now, I mean, I'll have moments, and I've had plenty with myself, even when you've been away or whatever, where I've received downloads, and I don't like say, oh, it's like, think, you know, it's not like a person. It's just like, I recognize, oh my gosh, I am the divine receiver. I am the channel. I am an energy body. And when you even taught me this, seeing everyone as we're antennas, my construct of life, my mindset was blocking any new signals from coming in because I was safe. That was my security. That was my everything. I wasn't willing to challenge it because it would have, at the time I didn't know if I was being challenged, except, well, no. What challenged me, Andre, to shift, question was, I want to be a woman. I remember being like, I want to know what it's like to be a woman because I've never had an orgasm and I've never had a boyfriend, I've not really done the crazy things. And I was
Purity
like,
culture.
I'm gonna do something crazy. And and thank God for that small voice in me that was willing. I can think about that. It was my Saturn, I think, was squaring itself before my Saturn return. But Saturn was like, yeah, you go to London for your study abroad. And yeah, you go to that sex shop. And yeah, you go get that vibrator. And yeah, have your first orgasm consciously ever. I'm so grateful for that still small voice. And it's interesting because I can remember that language of, in Christianity, they call it like the Holy Spirit, but truly at the core of it, what they didn't want to tell the collective, all of us women, was like, your intuition is your greatest superpower. When you know yourself, when you know your voice, when you are embodied in that, you're not easily manipulatable. And so that's why I'm so grateful now more than ever, like the heart. I may have been seduced and manipulated before, but what I've loved is like the journey of self-love has really helped me see like the power of one of the erotic archetypes that I work with. This is the seductress. And we've talked about this a lot. Like when it comes to power dynamics, when it comes to sex, when it comes to politics, it's like, when you love yourself, you'll seduce yourself more and more into loving yourself. It's like an energy. It's almost like addicting in the healthy way. And for example, great example is when, for example, I show up at a dance studio every Friday and I seduce myself more and more every week. Meaning I love myself every time more and more, and I see more of myself. And it's like that one quote about the carving. What is it? The man being carved and he's being revealed.
Michelangelo, in regards to David, he said, I saw an angel in the marble, like he was already there. I just had to carve away the extra pieces and free him.
Yeah. And that's what we're all about. That's what I've been on. And here's the thing I've learned too. It's like, I know we didn't talk about it, but this is translated as well, like the politics that has translated into play temples and experiences we've been part of, and what can happen when we're not. What can happen when power plays happen in temples like that, or experiences where.
Well, power dynamics are definitely a part of it, He who is the organizer of the event wields power.
Yeah.
Facilitators
Yeah.
wield power. Guests can look up to them. They can in any workshop or retreat, actually.
Yeah.
There's always like looking up to the teacher, and that's why there's, sometimes teachers that take advantage of that power dynamic. Just like I've seen venue owners take advantage of their power dynamic.
Yeah.
And not just over others, but sometimes over the leaders.
Yeah.
Who then, even the leaders are afraid to speak up. You see it reflected everywhere. Sometimes men over women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to say that.
In positions of power, sometimes women over men.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You see it leveraged and used all sorts of ways.
Yeah, that's why I think ethical hedonism is really important to understand too. I mean, we could talk about this on so many other episodes, but
I would like you to think of Christianity for a moment, since it's been the subject of so much of the conversation. Just think of Christianity, and I'm going to read you some statements. And you just say true or false if you think it applies. A system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or
Yes,
object.
Jesus.
A group having religious beliefs or practices that could be regarded by others as strange
Oh my gosh.
or
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Baptism of the Holy Spirit shaking on the floor.
What about, well, okay.
Yes.
You must have peeked ahead at the list of questions. Excessive admiration for this particular person, thing, idea. Excessive admiration, maybe to the point that it clouds critical thinking or influences going with your intuition. True, false?
It was a lot of yes.
Okay. Now think of MAGA. Think of the political movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to repeat this list of criterion. Same thing, true or false. Okay.
Yeah.
A system of veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure.
Yes, Trump.
A group of people having beliefs or practices that could be regarded by others as strange, or in some cases even sinister.
The January 16th.
That's what comes to mind. So true?
Yes,
Would you say
true.
true? Okay.
Yeah.
And then excessive admiration to where it can cloud personal judgment or interfere with relationships,
Yep.
life decisions.
Yep. It interfered with my
So
relationship with my family.
3 for Christianity.
Yep.
3 for MAGA. You see where the overlap is.
Yeah.
I have been reading the Oxford Dictionary definition of a cult.
Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that is the problem. We started out this conversation, we were talking about putting ourselves in a box. When you get so attached to a label or a way of defining yourself that you cease to be yourself.
Yeah. You don't know
I've
yourself.
been reading the definition of a cult.
Well, they don't want you to. Your identity is so wrapped up in calling on Jesus, thinking that there's this higher power here to help you even in times of need. It's interesting. It's really interesting because in choosing to leave, there are elements, for example, within the church setting that I was fully expressing, like dancing and dance pastoral work and stuff. I still dance to this day. What I have realized more than ever, because I have definitely like researched this around the whole cult and the background around that, is there's less pressure. And this truly, to me, feels like the most spiritual initiation. Because when you trust yourself, it's really, really powerful. And that has been my initiation, is like learning to deepen in self-intimacy and really, honestly, like how it talks about in the Bible of like Jesus went away for like 40 days and 40 nights, which I've been there actually in the Holy Land. And I got sandals there once. It was, wild. But just that reflection of, I understand that feeling of, when you leave, you're gonna, if you do leave, or if you're in just reconstructing, like you'll find self-trust, self-intimacy. It's a journey. But
Well, getting away to find yourself. You know what? If Jesus showed up today and took a look around at everything that's happening, he would be furious, like
flip the tables.
all over again. Like, he healed people for free. Like, he was all about socialized medicine. Like, he wasn't for deportation. He said, if you see a foreigner, you love them as you do your own family. You welcome them, right? It's not just love thy neighbor, it's love thy foreigner too. Like, look it up. You know, it's like, he's so the exact opposite of the typical religious, or mega right person today. The complete polar opposite.
Yeah. Sad. Yeah, I mean, Yeah.
I'm not telling anybody what to think, but you decide for yourself. Do you believe in those teachings or not? And if so, embrace them instead of the exact opposite of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, pull your head out of your butt.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I always used to hear this of like, you don't know what you don't know. And when I started asking deeper questions, it led me more and more to more insight, more education. I remember when I was still up in North, I went to Barnes & Noble and one of the workers introduced me to the book Wild Woman, Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I read that. I was like, what is this? And it was talking about psychology. It was talking about feminine archetypes and talking about the journey of, the dark night of the soul. And I had no idea fully what I was getting myself into, but that's the beauty of life, I truly feel, is like, if there's anything I've mentioned here, it's like trusting yourself is also surrendering, allowing what's meant for you to come into your world. I truly believe empowerment is believing whatever is available for you in the frequency, and you believe it's to be true. Like it will show up in your world. And you know what and this is not something I was planning to talk about, but I do feel like what we're seeing in the world is like a lack mentality, or just when you have fear, there's a lack, there's a dance around that. But nonetheless, I'm really proud of this conversation. Like, I'm proud of myself, but I'm really thankful for this conversation, because this journey has been really intimate and really expanding, and just being real with you all. It's wild.
As we reach the conclusion of this talk, if I was to sum up how I feel about politics, I don't like it. It divides people. We need more things that unite us rather than more things that divide us. Like all of this stuff, boundaries, like borders, like religions, like political parties, race, age, sex, gender, your views about gender. What else can we think of? Like, it's all meaningless. It's all labels. The more labels we hang on ourselves, the more division there is. We need things that unify us. And like, we have more power than we realize, and it's time we stopped giving it away. That's my takeaway. Yeah.
Just stand in your power. Recognize, like, here's the nice thing about life too, is like, you get to reinvent yourself at any time.
Like that snake, you can shed your skin. You can
play.
Yeah. Play. Let's not forget play.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you.
Really enjoyed the conversation, and you can find us at tantricawakening.net, and you can find this show on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube. We're on all the channels wherever your favorite happens to be. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Take care.